This is IAQ Radio, Indoor Air Quality Radio, the voice of the indoor air quality industry, with your hosts, Radio Joe Hughes and the Z-Man, Cliff Zlotnick. And now, Radio Joe Hughes.
Good day and welcome to IAQ Radio Plus. It's episode 772, and this week we're broadcasting live from Winter Break 2026 in Bonito Springs, Florida. We're going to talk today about building envelope moisture surveys. The gang is all at the Winter Break 2026 conference where they've just been talking about building envelope moisture surveys. Joining us will be Pete Consigli, the Water Break 2026 host and global watchdog, John Isaacson of the DYO Joe Show, Ashley Easterby, the Aussie restorer, Luis Suarez, restorer and bilingual educator, Wynn White Sr., Louisiana consulting engineer and father to the most interesting engineer in the world, and of course, Stephen Richford, UK restorer and co-founder of the British Damage Management Association. Before we get started, let's thank our sponsors. They're the reason we can do the show. And don't forget, after the show, we continue the conversation on afterthoughts.iaqradio.com.
IAQ Radio Association sponsors are the Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, IICRC, a nonprofit standards development and certifying body for the cleaning and restoration industry at iicrc.org. The Restoration Industry Association, RIA, at restorationindustry.org. The Environmental Information Association, EIA, at eia-usa.org. IAQ Radio industry sponsors are Particles Plus at particlesplus.com. Tramex Meters at tramexmeters.com. EMSL Analytical Inc. at emsl.com.
Let's turn it over to the Z-Man. First, give us a little intro to what's going on down there in Winter Break.
Okay. Well, it's been a pretty busy week. It's been a whole week. There are classes going on. There was the main event. Before the main event, there was a private meeting of the Moisture Mob, which was pretty interesting. And we're inducting some new people and discussing family business and so on and so forth, just like in The Godfather.
Go ahead, Stephen.
I'll start again. Yeah. So Mickey mentioned that RH is actually secondary, not so important as other measurements. However, when we deal with flooded buildings, so after we've dried the building out, we need to know whether we're getting to a target moisture level. There is a British standard that requires us to measure the relative humidity within a box attached to the surface of the floor, and we're seeking to get to below a target level. What I've learned is that as far as moisture readings are concerned, all that glitters is not gold. So the presence of strong alkali salts on the surface of the floor, sodium hydroxide and other hydroxides, can lead to a depression of the relative humidity, which is giving an erroneous reading, and may not be truly representing the actual moisture content of the floor. So that's something I wasn't fully aware of before, and one of the takeaways from this week.
Stephen, I was looking at the British Damage Management Association website, a very interesting group, and I'm wondering if the standard you just mentioned came from there.
No, it's the British Damage Management Association promoted or actually wrote the British Standard for Damage Management. So there's the British Standard Organization, and the British Standards Organization is similar to your standards organizations, and it has various standards that require conditions to be met before resilient floor coverings are installed, and all sorts of activities that are regulated by British standards. So one of those British standards defines what moisture level should be present when flooring is laid, and that's the definition of a humidity. It gives the definition of a humidity reading within a surface, within a surface-mounted box.
recommendation or tip or something that you've learned on doing a moisture survey on a building that the audience could learn from?
Well, the great thing is that we don't have the climate you've got here in Florida with huge moisture in the air, high dew points external to the building, and then air-conditioned spaces within. But the practitioners that were talking this week were very precise and clear about the need to really plan to have the ability to document many, many different variables, because investigating building defects requires meticulous record keeping for the eventual court case, which many of them are regularly presenting themselves and are making depositions in.
Yeah, for me, my takeaway is really how many much smarter people there are with good experience than me. And I learned that I don't know a whole lot when it comes to everything that we deal with, or I don't know as much as I thought I did. How about that? And so I learned who I can call. And I've got taken off on a tangent on concrete, and I'm still confused, but at least I know who I can call when I run into an issue. So for me, I mean, just a lot of brilliant people here, and I recommend if you're in this business, you ought to be here at the winter break and summer camp as well. But where else are you going to get this kind of education and learn from your peers? This is it.
Well, I want you to share the takeaway that you gave me, because I think that was a game changer.
Well, which one are you talking about?
The
chipping up the ceramic tile.
Right.
We had some floods in Baton Rouge, and there's a picture in the paper of a man chipping up the ceramic tile off his bathroom floor, and it suffered a flood, so they had water on it. And I said, well, number one, last week you'd have been out there swimming in the bayou, and you wouldn't have thrown all your clothes away and all of that. And then secondly, I said, do you have any boys in the family? Well, yeah. I said, well, sometimes they don't always hit the toilet. And do you chip the ceramic up because the kids peed on it? And the short answer is no, you don't. So you don't always have to do what some folks say you need to do for remediation.
It's a pretty powerful statement, particularly if you're being in court. I wouldn't use it in the deposition, but it would be a great bomb to drop when you're in court with a jury and a judge that's looking for some practical information upon which to make a decision.
I'll have to think about that.
All right. Very good.
To be quite honest, I'm blessed to be here. I'm amongst the giants, the people who pioneered a lot of the stuff. And one thing that I did learn that is common to every single industry, no matter which industry, if you're in the HVAC and the roofing, the concrete and all that stuff, it's two things. One, water unite us. And then the other one is that dew point is an issue. So those are the two things that I ended up capturing like as a pattern. We're always going to be dealing with water, so that's going to bond every single side of the industry. And dew points, apart from other issues, but is one of the causes that we end up having for us to get called in there because things end up condensating in spots that should not be condensating. Yesterday's presentations from Ralph hit a lot of points where if people need to actually be here in order for you to experience what I experienced. Because like I said, I'm among the giants, pioneers, legends, and it's a lot that they had to go through and learn. And I'm thankful for that. But I don't know if there's another question. Sorry,
Well, we're looking for something that you can share with the audience regarding, something that you do when you're inspecting a building envelope, or something that you do when you're teaching someone how to
inspect the building in.
Yeah, so when I'm doing the inspections for some customers or whenever some stuff end up going to through litigations or so on and so forth with the expert work, um there was one thing that I always had curiosity that I don't know if it was you, Mike, or I think John, either or, mentioned about the backdraft whenever people are washing stuff and the middle side of the clothing remains wet. Um, that part has been a puzzle to me until today, to be quite honest, or yesterday, simply because it answers different questions as to why the AC unit is also on, because that's some of the stuff that I end up discovering along the inspections. And the teaching side, because mainly that's what I do, mainly teaching bilingual restorers. Um, Mainly, there's going to be a change in my approach, making sure that it is more understandable. There's a lot of technicalities, a lot of great stuff that in the science you can't really fake, but I have to make sure that I can break it down from thermography, moisture readings, especially the concrete side, because there's a lot of people that you know it gets wet, let's say with category 3 water, everything is ripping off as to the flooring, but there's certain things that people really have to be aware of. Because it's gonna hurt the restorer, or if not the homeowner.
Unbelievable event, Joe. Everyone really communicated well. What I took away from it was, look, every job there's complications, there's things we don't understand. It's very important that you are careful in what you say on a job to make sure you don't say the wrong things, and that you also know someone. And if you come to events like this, you learn who to reach out to. So I may not know the answer, but I reckon I know someone who will. And I think that's vitally important, particularly when you're dealing with inspections that can turn into litigious issues, making sure you know people who can help you. That's it, simple.
No problem. Well, I have about 40 pages of notes. Okay. And so what we're going to do is go through these and speaker by speaker, and I'll tell you what I picked up. And any comments will be appreciated. Well, I think one of the things that was important that was shared is really how we would test concrete, the tools that are involved, the testing method, the standards, and Bob Blockinger did a really nice job on that. And if you're doing these types of tests, which involve drilling into concrete and placing sensors, etc., safety is important, and you have to have the right personal protective equipment. One thing that you don't want to do is do a drill test on pre-stressed concrete or on a post-tension slab. And I'm not an engineer, but I suspect that Wynn might be able to comment on that and tell us why you wouldn't want to do that.
Well, if you get into one of the tendons, it ain't going to be pretty what happens with that beam or slab. So, we don't have x-ray vision. You just don't know where the steel is in it. So you're really jeopardizing the structural integrity of the hook structure.
And you wouldn't know just by looking at it. At least a novice certainly wouldn't know by looking at it that this shouldn't be drilled.
Right. I guess you could spend a lot of time, even with the tray mix, you can find the steel, but you got to go looking for it, and you got to get it to read deep enough. So if it's beyond the depth that the meter scans, you're not going to know where the steel is. So yeah, don't drill a hole through the rebar, or you're going to cause real problems. So, yeah, moisture's a problem. The structural problems are more serious.
Understood. All right, let's move over to concrete. Bob, he made a number of different presentations. He made some private ones to the Moisture Mob, and he also made them during the main program. First of all, what was startling to me is that concrete industry doesn't really understand their product, and that product has changed significantly under the years, and the testing has not responded. So they're still utilizing old tests on new types of concrete, and those tests don't always provide accurate results because the concrete's different. One of the things that also surprised me that he said is he compared taking a relative humidity reading over the ocean and taking one over an inland pond or lake, and which one did we think would be higher. And I think everybody was wrong. I think everyone thought the ocean would be higher, and actually the pond's higher. He said the ocean would be about 80%, and that pond or lake would be around 90%. There's a difference between alkalinity and pH. And this is something that a lot of people don't understand, particularly in the cleaning industry, because I think it's been taught incorrectly for many, many years. They tend to not quite understand it and kind of deal primarily with pH. They take a pH reading, that pH reading may be 13, which you think is high. However, the alkalinity and the pH are two different things. The amount of alkalinity that's there provides residual activity. So if we're cleaning and we're using a pH cleaning agent of 13, it's not going to stay 13 long if the cleaning material isn't buffered. What buffer does is it adds alkalinity, which provides maintaining that alkalinity through that pH reading through the entire cycle. Okay, so that's the difference between high pH and high alkalinity. And they oftentimes get confused. Bob said that you can do everything right, and you can still get in trouble.
Yeah,
because the concrete's not right. He also said that the top 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch is where all the concrete failures occur. And again, it's due to salts that are in that cement that are moving. Let's see. One thing that is real important that Bob said and other people also said is the importance of testing the concrete before you install any type of flooring material. Very, very important. If you don't have that, if you don't have a baseline, you could be in big trouble in the future. Another thing about these moisture tests that we do, they tell us where moisture is. They don't tell us where the moisture came from. And one of the things that is oftentimes overlooked is the concrete actually absorbs moisture from the indoor environment. All right, let's see. Let's talk a little bit about Gabriel Ballinger. The ICRC's put together a new course, and this is on building moisture inspection. He gave a great presentation. The guy was very, very animated, more than an Italian. That's what I was telling Pete. The Frenchman must be way more animated. But he just talked about the importance of the things that are taught in the course and concentrated in the course. And some of those things are the importance of professional judgment, determining what caused the moisture problem, scientific method for looking at the problem. That was mentioned by a number of different speakers in terms of how we put our reports together and how we think, really the importance of that scientific method. Let's see. And building science is taught, moisture dynamics, measurements, building assembly failures, consequences, inspections, and documentation. Next presentation was done by David Daniels. He's with Tramex. And what he was talking about was this importance of this moisture testing of that concrete immediately before installation. Very, very important. And he talked about how to take the readings. According to the standard, we're supposed to take 8 readings in the first 1,000 square feet. The readings need to be taken 6 feet in from the wall. And when we take these readings, we actually don't just take one reading. We take 4 readings. And it's almost like a watch or a clock where you take one at 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And whatever the highest reading is, that's the one that we use. We don't average them together. We just use the highest one. Another thing that he brought up is that the slab generally cools at night when it's cooler. And when you're taking these tests, the slab's there's gonna be a lag between how long it takes for that slab to warm up. So you just need to know that. One of our speakers wasn't able to come because he had a fall. And Pete went through a whole list of all these people that were supposed to be here and aren't here. We had 2 speakers this morning, 2 people that were on the panel. Neither one of them is here because both of them are sick. John Isaacson's sick and Randy Rapp is sick. So it's just an unbelievable set of unfortunate circumstances. All right, so Bob Blockinger presented Roland Vieira's presentation, which was fluorine forensics. Again, he started out with the scientific method, and he gave a list of things we want to do. We want to gather data that we trust, but we want to verify that data. We want to make observations. We want to define the suspected problem. He talked about using light at different angles when you're inspecting flooring materials because it can show crowning and different types of defects that might not be seen under normal ambient light. We want to create a hypothesis. We want to create an explanation. The hypothesis needs to be tested, and we want to conduct some experiments in order to do that. And finally, we're going to present these results. We're going to have detailed documentation that goes along with it. We're going to formulate our conclusion, and we're going to communicate. And one thing that he pointed out over and over is don't take any shortcuts. Next presentation was a very short one. It was done by Howard Brickman. He talked about engineered wood flooring and just talked about things that we didn't think about. And one of the things that he said is wood is anisotropic, which means it can expand in multiple directions, up and down and sideways and lengthwise and so on and so forth. He said that engineered flooring is great for use in high relative humidity areas, climates. However, if you're using it in a desert, you can encounter some shrinkage problems. There were also a couple of panels which were Stump the Mob, and we would have speakers come up and they would take questions from the audience. It's probably getting close to halftime, so I think what we can do is pause and thank our sponsors, and then we can pick up again.
Our association sponsors are the Institute for Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, IICRC, a nonprofit standards development and certifying body for the cleaning and restoration industry at iicrc.org. The Environmental Information Association, EIA's multidisciplinary membership collects, generates, and disseminates information concerning environmental and occupational health hazards in the built environment at eia-usa.org. The IICRC, a nonprofit standards development and certifying body for the cleaning and restoration industry, iicrc.org. The Restoration Industry Association, the oldest and largest nonprofit professional trade association dedicated to providing leadership and promoting best practices through advocacy, standards, and professional qualifications for the restoration industry at restorationindustry.org. Industry sponsors are Particles Plus, feature-rich particle counters and air quality instrumentation. Count on us, particlesplus.com. Tramex Meters, innovation in moisture detection and humidity monitoring systems since 1974 at tramexmeters.com. EMSL Analytical Inc., providing high-quality, full-service laboratory services since 1981. EMSL.com.
The second half here, we got the Z-Man. He's going to kind of take control because it works a little better that way.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the main event, day one. Pete started out with a presentation on building science, no frills, and made a number of comments real important. One thing that we know is when we're dealing with temperature, we're dealing with humidity, we're dealing with heat, et cetera, that more has a tendency to go to less. That when we have a complaint in a building, people oftentimes jump to conclusions and they'll say that it's the mold or it's the chemical and so on and so forth. They need to consider that it could be particulate matter, it could be chemicals or VOCs, it could be biologicals. Relative humidity is worthless for engineers, but it's the best single number to predict drying. So that's why it's important to restoration people. Let's see. It's important to understand the IEQ terms that we're using. We have to know what they mean. We have to be able to explain them to clients. All right. Let's go to the next speaker, John Lapotier. Did a wonderful presentation on water vapor, the often overlooked water phase, the summer season nemesis. John works down in Florida, works on a lot of high-end buildings, and does a lot of moisture surveys and expert witness work. Okay, let's see. Said number one, focus on the why. Wall coverings. And he used two terms I'd never heard before, but I'm going to be using them again. One is called the Radisson rash. Another one's called the Hyatt hives. That's when you look at wall covering on exterior walls of buildings that is actually forming a moisture barrier and not allowing moisture to pass through. And all of a sudden, the wall covering starts turning colors. A thing to consider is backdrafting, causing building failures, and also backdraft damper failures. Pretty common down here in Florida where they have a lot of humidity issues. Then we had John T. Hall, best practices for roof surveys using all the tools in the diagnostic toolbox. Some of the things he said is that you could have a wet blanket on top of your building when water enters the roofing system. That water in the roof moves down, also moves side to side. The question that you're trying to answer is going to determine the tool that you're using. Believe it or not, 20% of money spent in the roofing industry is actually spent on roof restoration. So there's a lot of roof restoration particularly in commercial buildings where they're actually working and saving and repairing what's there. He went through all the different tools that are used: electronic leak detection, impedance meters, infrared, nuclear. Some of the things that John said that are very profound. Meters work as compasses, not rulers. When you're using these meters, we're looking for patterns, not specific numbers. He suggests making a core cut into a dry area to determine the baseline. And that in many situations, he does what's called surgical destructive. And what that means is instead of making a big hole, they use long pins that are actually driven into the various layers of the roofing material. Another good point he makes is when the tools don't agree, that this disagreement is actually a clue, not a failure. When using infrared cameras, the camera never lies. The interpretation sometimes does. Also, more testing doesn't make a better decision. Better interpretation does. What we do on roofs doesn't just stay on the roof. False certainty is more dangerous than uncertainty. And then the two Johns, John Hall and John Lapotere, did a really, really good wrap up, talking about the importance of good photos, that both of them go and look places that they figure the opposing expert witness isn't going to go or isn't going to look. And that particle count readings, John suggested taking particle count readings, both with the building at rest and with the air conditioning operating, and waiting 45 minutes in between. Good points. Next was Jeremy Beagle, who talked about crawl space, the silent saboteur, understanding dew point and condensation to avoid moisture, mold, and the crawl space blues. First of all, condensation damage is not a covered insurance peril. And one of the things you have to look at is the people trying to get an insurance claim paid. That's not really a claim. Crawl spaces are common because it's less costly to build a building with a crawl space than with a finished basement. That when we have condensation, it's actually the collection of many, many small droplets on a surface. Down in Florida, in the South, humid air gets into cooler basements and causes condensation. And what happens is the dew points in these basements ends up being higher than the dew point in the air conditioned upstairs, and we end up having problems upstairs. Also, there are a lot of older homes down here, and people have a tendency to buy them and add on to them, renovate them, and this disrupts all of the original natural ventilation patterns that were in the house. Again, he stressed the scientific method. Huey Miller. Huey Miller did a presentation by the numbers, and this is using the various HVAC standards during a building moisture investigation. And he went through all of them. Next presentation was Mike McGuinness, uncontrolled moisture and mold in schools, dealing with IEQ emergencies. We already talked about Mike talking about pregnant building tiles. Next presentation was done by Ken Siders. Ken Siders did a moisture mapping and moisture inspection of the building envelope in a church after a hurricane. And this was years ago, and they just actually settled the claim. And he showed the documentation that he did. It was about, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches thick, hundreds of photos and all sorts of documents, and pretty good presentation. All right, that takes us for the first day. Main event, second day, we started out with 4 principles of project management done by John Isaacson. The importance of bedside manner of the people working out on the job. They could be great craftsmen or great technicians, but if they don't treat the client right, you're going to have some problems. The client wants to always know how much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, when are you going to start, when are you going to be done, and you need to communicate. And sometimes things happen, like you order cabinets and they're not going to come on time and so on and so forth. It's very important to articulate and communicate to those customers that we're working for you behind the scenes. We're having an issue with getting delivery. A promise was made to us that it's been broken. I've called them every day, and I'm working for you. Important stuff. Next was a presentation on flooring failures due to concrete moisture content and emission, and what every drying contractor needs to know about concrete. This was Concrete Bob again. That testing is different when done in a laboratory and when done in the field. He also said that technology sometimes seems like a hamster wheel, and we're just going around in circles and not making any progress. That's when he told us about the difference between the salt water and the fresh water, relative humidity. I said that concrete is full of confounding factors, and that water behaves differently in concrete because air is an open structure and concrete is not. Concrete's like a loaf of bread. The crust reacts differently than what's underneath. Efflorescence is caused by moisture diffusion, not moisture migration. You can have no definable quantification without context. That when we go into a Home Depot or a hardware store and we see a bag of what's sold as cement, that's not actually cement, it's something called clinker. And it doesn't become cement until water is added to it. That the older the concrete is, the more likely the concrete is to collect salts on its surface. These salts pull moisture in from the atmosphere. When evaluating concrete, you have to find a dry point, and from that, we can standardize. Next thing that happened was Wynn White telling me about the pee on the floor. And I have that one highlighted. Next was moisture testing history and its application to building science, and that was done by Andrew Reinhardt, and he's president of Tramex. I never knew that the WME, the Wood Moisture Standard, is actually a reference scale that's calibrated by wood. And when that same meter setting is used to measure another material, that's actually the equivalent, right? So the readings would be different. And the reason that this wood testing has been very, very important for a long time is that wood is kiln dry, and it takes a lot of energy to do that kiln drying. And they don't want to spend any more time than necessary, any more energy than necessary drying it. So that's why for many, many years. And that this moisture testing goes back to the 1850. And what they would do back in the old days is they would make a hole. They would put a piece of wood in that hole that was pre-weighed. They would know what the weight of that piece of wood was. They would drive it into the material. They'd leave it in there for a while. They would remove it. They would weigh it. And that gravimetric difference is how they would determine how much moisture was present. One thing that Andrew said I never really thought about before is that repeatability of a test is more important than accuracy. He went through the different types of meters, impedance, pin meters, destructive, non-destructive, so on and so forth. Then we had a presentation by Ralph Moon. He actually did two of them together. One was best practices for performing moisture inspections, and particularly for getting ready to prepare a case for litigation. One of the things that he said was that courts are very lenient when it comes to engineers, and that they hold other people to a higher standard. He said that you should, number one, figure out who's paying you. You should request a retainer. You should ask them for specific instructions of what do you want me to do. You should then look in the mirror and determine whether or not you have the skill set to do that. And you should ask for substantial information that they have before you make the site visit. Try to get it as far in advance as you can, because sometimes there may be a lot of stuff that you have to go through. Ralph also stressed going where the competitor didn't go, going into crawl spaces, going into attics, having the PPE and the coveralls and whatever you need just to go into those places. He talked about putting together, the requirements of putting together a defensible report. Took you through that step by step. The importance of doing tests that are demonstrative. Many of us have seen a blue paper towel. Sometimes they have them at the gas station for cleaning your windows, and sometimes they're sold rags in a box, so on and so forth. But by having those blue towels, a lot of times you can show water dripping, which would not be visible on a white paper towel, but it's going to be visible on a blue paper towel. Particularly if you're looking in cabinets underneath sinks and drains and so on and so forth. Good stuff. He talked about finding evidence among the obscure, which was a good point. A couple of things to think about is if you're dealing with townhouses or row houses, that what's going in next door can affect what's going on in the property that you're actually inspecting. He described mobile homes as a metal box with floor penetration. And he talked about the effect of appliances on the building. And for instance, if it's a family that has one or more small children and they're doing a lot of laundry, that laundry or the dryer is going to kick out somewhere between 200 and 250 cubic feet a minute. And what's going to happen is that air that's being exhausted is going to be replaced potentially by hot, humid air, and that can cause problems inside of the building. Talked about the differences between capillary action, vapor diffusion, and gave examples of both. We don't want to forget that in the wintertime, heat's going to move outward. In the summertime, that heat is going to move inwards. He said that when we find uniform mold coverage, for instance, behind a dresser, behind a mirror, behind a cabinet, that's caused by vapor, not liquid moisture. That's it.
Good point.
All right. Any comments on any of those comments? Are there anything that I missed that you guys picked up? All right, you want to go to roundup, Joe?
Let's go to the roundup, Grayson. All right, the roundup brought to us by Tramex Meters. Let's see if do we have the restoration industry global watchdog around here somewhere?
You mean you can't see me?
There he is.
Well, Drayson, I didn't do the sound check, so am I coming in okay?
You sound good, buddy.
All right, because I'm in the office. I'm not in the same room with those guys. I'm on my computer, so we don't get any feedback or anything like that. I actually haven't called in on my computer. I can't remember when, because normally when I'm home or whatever, I call on my iPad. So the hotel let me take over the sales office. The sales manager who worked with us last year and did most of the planning, she moved to Phoenix, and right after the first of the year, and the general manager didn't hire anybody new. So he gave me the whole sales office. They basically let us take over the hotel. Matter of fact, Dave Denard from Sunbelt came in. He said, "Pete, you got your own office in the hotel?" I said, "Nah, it's just temporary." And we took the whole first wing of the floor down here for the hospitality suite, because at night we would only bother the weight room and the laundry room, and there was nobody else to bother down there. I think next year we may take the entire first floor, including on the meeting rooms too. So that way we have the whole first floor. We don't bother anybody. So a lot happened. I took some notes. Cliff, before I get into my thing, there was one, I think you missed one key speaker for the flooring symposium, and I don't know if you took any notes on that. And unless I missed it, I was listening as he went through the list. And Gabriel and the Frenchmen are more animated than the Italians. Seth Pavernak, he gave a great presentation from Henry Ardex. Did you cover any key points on him? Because that was on the flooring symposium day with Blotchinger. He did Fred Houston's stone presentation. They did the Roland's forensic presentation. David Daniel did his, was wonderful presentation, real-time testing, and set the floor pup causation, all that. Had you covered anything on that? Did I miss it? Or
Yes, I do have notes on it. I didn't highlight them for some reason. I was going through this morning and highlighting all the points. And I just skipped over his accidentally. So sorry about that.
You want to make a few comments on him? Whatever notes you took? Because I was kind of in and out of the room, not doing stuff. But I saw his PowerPoint. His PowerPoint was fabulous.
Keep talking and I'll find it. How's that?
Yeah. So Seth, he is the technical director for Ardex Americas. They're based out of Pennsylvania. They're a global company, Henry Ardex. And he had given a presentation, this one similar, with Bob Botchinger's Dalton event, which is underwritten by the IICRC, which they do in the fall. And that has a different audience, a lot of the mills and retail, that kind of thing. And then he modified it really for our audience and for the drying guys and the flooring people, specifically rated with the moisture in the concrete. So anyway,
when you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So first of all, he said that concrete, three things about it. It's gray, or four, I guess. It's gray, it's hard, it cracks, and nobody's going to steal it. He said that concrete is dynamic. and it's either moving or non-moving. And the more dynamic it is, the more active the cracking is. I talked about slab curl, and slab curl was caused by differential drying. And he gave us some examples of in plane versus out of plane cracking. And he talked about methods of repairing it, one of which is called stick and glue. And it's exactly what you think it is. They take these little sticks and they glue it. And I guess the sticks are made out of metal. And you can't really guarantee that that's going to return structural and integrity. And you really need to have a structural engineer decide how far the repair is to be made, whether it can be made, and what products need to be used. I talked about finishing concrete too early is what causes air bubbles. We talked about osmotic blistering. The solvent is water. The solute is natural salts. And we have a semi-permeable membrane. And cement is actually a paste or an adhesive residue. And then he talked about ASTM C856, which is the standard practice for petrographic examination of hardened concrete. And that were my notes from his presentation.
Why don't we go to Wynn White and get final thoughts from Wynn? I want to do this before we go around the table and just get any final thoughts, maybe follow-ups on what Cliff presented. Let's start with Wynn White.
Yeah, well, I thought the whole week, starting Sunday, all the way through to today, and John Hull's program on roofing, and really all of the speakers, just top notch. And it's worth my investment, so I think it would be worth just about everybody else. If you're in this business, if you're in the building science business, you should be here at winter break. And maybe this is minor to other people, and Cliff brought it up, but talking about communication, customer service. You know what? I'm an engineer, and sometimes I fall short on those issues. I'm pretty tight-lipped, and my bedside manner might not be the best in the world, so I need to work on that. But it was good to hear, even for an engineer. So,
well, before we go on, I think talking about engineering, you're the father of the most interesting engineer, and I've known you for a while now, and I think that the interesting part must have come from your wife's side of the
family. He got all her good attributes.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to Pete.
Yeah, yes. What happened? I saw the housekeeper down here, and I forgot I had all the Jersey Mike's leftover box lunches, and I pretty much feed everybody in the hotel staff. So I told her, it was in Spanish. I mean, I was talking quick, but she understood me. So I told her, we'll take them up to the office and feed the girls because it's lunchtime, and we feed everybody at winter break. That's a big thing about it. All right. So thank you, Cliff, for covering those points with Seth, because it was a fabulous presentation. I also, the one other thing, the minor correction, Andrew is not the president of Tramex. Actually, Tramex does not have a president. Tramex has 4 brothers who inherited the company from their mom and dad who started it 51 years ago, maybe 52. Yeah. 2024 was their 50th anniversary, their golden year. So Andrew is the CTO. He is the chief technical officer. That's what he does. And his brother Kelvin is director of sales. Jeremy does the marketing. We never see Jeremy. We see Kelvin and Andrew all the time. Jeremy kind of works behind the scenes. Their other brother, Dylan, who's an MBA and a PhD, he's the chief operations guy. So they basically have a C-suite of 4 brothers who operate technically, the sales, the marketing, and the operations. And that's how their generation. Now they also have Kuan, C-U-A-N. I always pronounce it wrong. And his either girlfriend or wife, Alicia. She's an Irish lass, as Andrew would say. And so he's a third generation. Kelvin, that's Kelvin's son, and he covered the event with Alicia, and they cover a lot of the events. Their Ryan Stanley is their he's based in London, and he's their worldwide head of sales. He started years ago in the monitoring, and Ryan he was in Dallas, couldn't be here. He's been here before because there was another event that he had to cover. So that's kind of their leadership team, and they have others too. So I don't know. We had somewhere about 90 to 100 total head count, give or take. We had a lot of different things going on, and so I kind of made some notes in that, and I wanted to kind of recognize the cover and all heads up on what's going on next year for planning purposes. So let me kind of first overview the week, because everybody was not everywhere, and it was kind of hard because we had the base hotel, which is in Bonita Springs to Fairfield. We've done multiple events here since Ian, when the hotel opened up. And we have an overflow hotel not too far away, which is another Marriott property where some people stayed, particularly if they brought family, and it's near a nice mall, close to 75, close to the airport. So we had two hotels, and then we had an event center, which is a short walk, but we had a shuttle service right in front of the Home Depot, right off Interstate 75, called Artichoke and Company. They're very well known here in the area. They have a location across in the Fort Lauderdale area too. They're catering and logistics. They do weddings, they do graduations, and they do corporate meetings. But we kind of pushed the envelope with them, they told me, because this was like a little mini convention. And we had a lot of setup with the AV people and how we set the room up. And a lot of our sponsors and supporters have been coming for years. They love the setup this time, because of I guess the coziness of it is the way that they kind of put it. And maybe when we do the final roundup, we can go around with the rest of the panel and they can kind of give their comments on that, because they've been to our events before in the different venues that we've had over the last 10 years. So we started off the week with invitation-only meeting for the Moisture Mob. A lot of those people came in on Saturday or Sunday. We had the usual high-end steakhouse dinner, the Peter Luger-style steak. We had about 25 there. They kind of go in Dutch. We all pay our own way. Then on Monday, we had the Moisture Mob meeting. We can't talk about it. It was invitation only. Nobody had to pay to come to it. Tramix helped underwrite it. And John T., my partner, and myself for the Moisture Mob training group, we hosted the event and, paid for those costs. The actual kickoff for the event was on Tuesday, but we had another little thing. We had Monday night, and a lot of people that were coming in for the Tuesday attended. We had about 50 people that attended the Celebration of Life ceremony for Mickey Lee. He was a member of the mob and obviously well-known industry legacy, and everything's out there. And we played taps for him after his passing. That was quite nice. It's a Terry's Diner. It's a family restaurant. They do a nice Italian theme menu for us. The chef owner used to work at an Italian restaurant. And we've been doing events there every year, the last, I think, 4 years. They closed the restaurant down, and we do private party for us. We also at that recognize the founder of the predecessor, Winter Break, which was called the ISF, Indoor Environmental Sciences Forum, started 10 years ago before it was rebranded. And we had all these other sponsors, and this thing just took on a life of its own. And that was Richard Alexis. He's kind of a South Florida legend. He's a brilliant man. And he passed away. And we created a poster, and a few of us spoke about him, particularly Eric Shapiro and self and others that knew him well. And he was on a couple of the radio shows, the Tampa event that we did several years ago. And then so on Tuesday, we moved into the pre-con day. We had two different things going on. We had the IICRC help underwrite the flooring symposium. Cliff's already talked about that, so not much more to say. That was in the larger meeting room here in the hotel. And then right down the hallway, the IQA, we had an industry partnership deal with them. So they did two things. The first thing is they had about 15 of their members. They kind of promoted it as a Florida forum, and was kind of a regional educational deal. but they had people that came from all around, not just in the regional area. And we did a half-a-day workshop. It was approved for everything under the winter break umbrella is approved for IICRC and RAA certification, and all of the events qualify for the ACAC recertification, because we have a lot of guys here that have those designations. The CIH is only environmental people, so they get all their credits. And so I put a program together for them as a half-a-day workshop by utilizing the speakers that were already here on the topics that they wanted. So they labeled that, and Jeremy Beagle and Eric Shapiro, who is the treasurer and on the executive committee, they were the boots on the ground for them. Now, Stanley, I never get Stanley's name right, from Virginia Beach. No, yeah, no, is he from Virginia Beach or maybe just northern Virginia? Well, anyway, he's from Virginia. He was the president. He came last year. He came this year, and so that we had, pretty much most of their better part of their executive committee here. Sarah, their executive director, worked behind the scenes, created a separate landing page. They took the registrations, and anyway, so we had 15. So I put a program together. Ralph did a 1-hour presentation on his post remediation verification paper that was published in the Surrey Journal. And Barb worked with Ramona Gallagher. They're both on the 320 committee, and did a wonderful presentation that Ramona delivered on dealing with the emergency response for contents, which was good for that audience, because sometimes they don't really kind of deal with the contents when they go out on these inspections. And then we had Sarah Mack from Entably Analytical, and she did a developer presentation with Alice D'Elia, who's the PhD lab director. Alice was the director of education for a few years, a while back with IAQA. She's brilliant, and they've been part of the winter break for years when they were Prison Analytical before they were bought out and became part of Enthalpy. And it was on fire analysis. And Jeremy in particular, I think Eric too, they wanted a deep dive on the analytics of fire, with the S700 being out, and a lot of their folks are kind of going on those jobs. So it was a highly technical presentation. I think Sarah, well, I wasn't in there, but Sarah did a really good job of presenting it. And then we had a little controversial topic at the end, not controversial for controversial sake, but we want to kind of address some of the things that are going out in the field. So we asked Brittany Gordon and Josh Krinsky, who formed Sporalytics. Your audience kind of knows them. The winter break people do, because they were with AML for many, many years. And then your friends brought them out. And doesn't matter. After the non-comp was off and everything, they opened the lab, Sporalytics. They rolled it out after the West Palm Beach convention last year. Me and John Isaacson went. We were the first people to see the lab right after my roast, before we went up to Orlando for Alacrity, because then the following Monday they opened it up, and they're doing great. And they did everything right. So we said, and they don't really like the public speak at all, but once you get them going. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to do an honest broker's viewpoint of the pros and cons of using the lab to send your samples in an evaluation, and doing your own thing. And doing your own thing may or may not be a conflict of interest. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on disclosure. What does the customer know? Are you using it for quality control, or are you using it to try to clear your own jobs, right? And Eric and Jeremy led with the group. They wanted to have a presentation given and then moderate it and get viewpoints and opinions on all that. And I reviewed the presentations, all of them, and it was good. I wasn't in the room for the meetings because I had too many other things going on. But I think they were very satisfied with it. And the alternative, what a lot of people are doing, is they're using the part like Particle Plus and all the particle counters, and they're using all the other methodology versus sending things into the lab. And I guess there's an application for both. I think it just depends how is it presented, and is there liability? What's the application? So they kind of got into that. Joe, that might be a very interesting topic to bring a bunch of people on in a future show where we actually expand on that. I'd say you talk to Jeremy and Eric, and then, just see what kind of interest. I think it'd be perfect for our audience, to be honest with you. And the thing is that a lot of the restoration guys now are having access to the labs. And some of the guys that do IQ are dealing with the particle counters because the fire standard's out and there's just a lot more going on with this. And I think it should be explored. And I think that's the reason why that the labs are starting to come to some of the more restoration dominant shows, because they realize that there's an audience there. Even if they may not get direct business, they're referring them, they're working with the third parties and the IEP types. And it's, that kind of a thing. So then the second day, then when the main event started, we also had in the hotel, that same IEQ group, they beta tested. We rolled out a new hands-on moisture testing workshop that is primarily put together by Tramix and the Moisture Mob Training Group, which was me and John T. I was kind of the organizer, developer, and facilitator, but I had to herd the cats to get the content. And the content was from Dave Daniels, was from Andrew, was from Ralph Moon, was from Roland, and Howard. Now, Howard Brickman was fabulous. He did a short presentation at the flooring exhibition that Cliff talked about, but he was the lead dog. Roland was supposed to be the lead dog, but when he got injured and couldn't come, Howard stepped up and it was great. And one of the things that we specified, they did their technical presentations the morning and laid the groundwork, right? Then they did shopping. I would send them over to the Home Depot and I made a whole list to buy all kinds of materials, every different material coverings. Then they took them up into their room and they wet them the night before. They wet them, they let them dry, they wiped them, they made them damp. So in the afternoon, then they did hands-on demonstrations. We had the room set up with round tables, and Tramix, donated. Well, they didn't donate; they put the meters out there, and the whole instructional team went through all the different settings, the types of meters with the materials that were dry, that were wet, to show them, the accuracy, how to use the meters properly. There's a big demand for this. And this is another show, Joe, potentially. Now, so then there was an exam. Now, what happened, and the exam was following the presentations. It was an open book exam. Everybody passed, but John T. Hull came in because we modeled the exam and the course after his ARE roofing course, which those guys are over there. I'll talk in a minute. They're going to be taking an exam pretty soon over there. And there's two components to this. Let me talk about John's course first, and I'll segue and tell you what we did with IQA, because it's very interesting. It's going to affect multiple industries. With John's course, he has the course approved for certain credits in the roofing industry, but he has a certification, which is under his own company, the ARE, Education Roofing Educators, because he also has his inspection business, which is Gulf Coast Infrared. And what he does is he goes through, they do hands-on demos, which Cliff talked about, because we did that in conjunction with Bob Blotchinger when he did the ASTM drill test and whatnot. And then it's a 2-day course. Then he talks about the standards, all the roofing stuff. They only get it in a 3-ring binder. There's no digital. And then it's an open book test with a series of questions. I don't know, I think 70 or 80, you have to get at least 70. And they take the exam. He grades them right there. Then he gives the exams back to him and he goes over the entire exam. And this fills up to what Cliff talks about. He says, the guy may have to take a thing, gets a 75, spend the rest of his career not knowing the 25% that was wrong. And now what if that guy happens to be a plane mechanic? Well, then the wheels fall off the plane, the door flies out like we had in the last year with United Airlines, some of these airlines. So they're going to know what they got wrong. They take their notes. Then John collects the exam back. That's why it's all done paper, not digital. That's how it protects the integrity of the information. And we use that same model here. They got 3-ring binders. They gave the exam. They knew what they got wrong. Why did we do that with IQA? IQA wanted a certificate. I want a certification. I said, no, you ain't getting a certification. We're not ready for that. But I said, what we will give you, which comes from Cliff's that I did years ago with the original WS. We called it gave them a certificate of substantiation of competency. In other words, we told them that we feel comfortable, you know how to use these meters, and you're not going to be out there looking like a bozo with this thing. All right? We didn't actually say that, but, we meant it in a good-spirited way. So by doing that, they're going to get a certificate. Now, what I think is going to happen, Joe, I think we're going down the same road as the demography years ago. Everybody got false readings and how to deal with them. Lou Herdman rolled it out in our industry years ago under this DM Moisture that he had a brand for years. And then eventually guys became a workshop and now 2-day certification. Well, the flooring industry wants that, and Tramix is working with installation people on something they rolled out in New Jersey. Obviously, the roofing industry has been working on that. No need to tell you about the restoration industry and the impact that this could have with a lot of the insurance work that's done, but that people can be dangerous with these meters if they don't know what they're doing, and there's a lot of impact that comes based on their recommendations, everything else, is it dry, isn't it dry, etc. So that was a beta that IAQA did. Tramix is going to roll Tramix is going to do that again with IAQA at their convention the first week of May in San Diego, and this is what the IAQA people is going to be tied in with them being having a booth in the expo hall. It'll be a conference program that we worked on live, and I saw him when he left the hotel the other day on the way to the airport in the morning. He said, "Look, little glitches here and there, but all in all, it went good and they were satisfied." And they said, "Well, we're just going to keep making it better and try to improve on it because I think the industry needs it." And I thanked them. And what led to that was when I went to the convention last year, I looked at the expo hall, and half of the vendors were IQ radio people at Particle. So John T, we tagged on a roofing course, which he is completing today. That was a 2-day course. We had dinners every night. Some were included with the event. Others were networking dinners. And they're still continuing to go for a couple of days. The other big thing that we had was the CDT trailer. Matt Hess brought the 40-foot commercial flood house down here. We must have ran 50, 60 people through there from both the IAQA, the main event people, the roofing guys, and all the flooring people. That was on site. Sunbelt basically got a generator delivered to run the trailer, and it was out there drying. I think Matt just left an hour or so ago. The Sunbelt folks are going to pick them up. I was on site at the hotel, and we shuttled people over from the event center. It was fabulous. Last thing I really want to say, Joe, is we had a hospitality suite every night for people to network with. There was a cigar smoking area out in the back, but we had all the industry partners here. Christy and Simo's the new CEO for REA were here because they had the AGA meeting at Pure Clean, so they kind of tied that in. The IQA leadership was here. We had the IICRC board members and Gabriel Bob Blotchinger, Darren Udima. We had the NACA folks came in. The president, Jim Castellano, and their executive director was here, Kim Wheeling, who I knew from the NDA for many, many years, the demo people from Purdue. So we had all the leadership of all these groups. Paul Lagrange was here, the executive chef for summer camp. Joe Stibrick was supposed to come, but he was another guy who went down and hurt himself, unfortunately, but he'll be okay. The best thing he said, "I missed the Italian dinner with you guys, I said, "Well, Joe, we were hoping everyone was looking for you." But, Ken Gehring came down, and Todd DeMonte, Overture, he did the same air quality test in the event center. He did a summer camp for 2 years. He gave a little report, and then with the scan code, everybody can get that little instrument he has for doing the monitoring. That was very interesting. Carl Grimes was here, quite a few of the industry personalities. And let me just put a final word. We had a couple of new sponsors, DocuSketch and the Magic Plan folks in trauma services. They had all their leadership and all the usual suspects, Sunbelt, ICP, the two labs, Enthalpy, Sporalytics, business mentors. Phil Rosebrook moderated one day, Josh Miller, President Rainbow did another, and of course Todd and Overture folks were great. We thanked them for their support. We couldn't do this without them. My delivery team, Paul Lagrange, Ashley showed up with a sling in his arm, but he had Luis there who kind of helped with everything, and Gordy, and everybody pitched in, and John Isaacson. And I told Ashley with one arm he's better than most guys with two because he's brilliant and he's a brilliant organizer. He irritates the heck out of me sometimes, but I love him. But and
I'm sure the feeling's mutual. Go ahead.
Absolutely. It takes one to know one sometimes. He calls me anal. I said, "Really? Okay." A pot calling the kettle black on that one. The other thing, Andy was there. I talked to Andy. I asked, He's next year going to do his. They have it's a winter break week. It's always going to be President's Day week. It's always going to be Naples, Bonita, Fort Myers area. But what we're going to consider, this Artichoke Event Center was fabulous the way it was set up, and they could put a tent outside. They've done weddings there for 300 to 400 people, and people can park in a Home Depot parking lot. Andy's going to talk to Ricky Sims about this. I said, why don't we just do one blowout? We'll have the event center. We'll have the thing. We'll have the CDT trailer back with the Sunbelt generator. Well, I told Ray this morning, the general manager hotel, I want the entire first floor, I want every room. And we're going to book the other overflow hotel for the people that want to bring families. And we're not only going to take over the hotel, we're going to take over the city of Bonita Springs for that whole week and all the venues where we have the parties. And this is going to be the place to be. Like in Westford, Massachusetts, the first week of August for almost 30 years. We'll start thinking about coming President's Day week from all over the world. We had Stephen, from the UK, the Aussies, a bunch of Canadians and people from all over the country, from the West Coast, from 5 or 6 of the major networks, their technical directors that were here. It's not how many people you have, it's who you have, the quality and the influence that they have. These boots on the ground and these people that Cliff talked about in the audience, we wanted to learn and we wanted to remember the motto of the Moisture Mob is truth to accuracy and to be accurate in that. And at that, it's 1:29 and we're going to be at 1:30 and I just dropped the mic and I hope you heard it.
This is Radio Joe saying thanks to this week's guests. We had Wynn White, John Isaacs, John's sick, Ashley Easterby, Luis Suarez, Stephen Richford, Mike McGuinness even jumped in, the restoration industry global watchdog, Pete Consigli, Cliff the Z-Man Zlotnick. Thanks to our engineer Grayson Gone Fishing Fisher. We'll be back in 2 weeks with the next episode of IAQ Radio Plus.
For IAQ Radio, I'm Spike Reel saying thanks for listening.